Pivot tables are a great way of analyzing large amounts of data, particularly raw data. For example, here I have details of orders made by different departments for different amounts and on different dates. If I wanted to find out which department ordered the most, pivot tables can do this quickly and transform it into an easy-to-use, flexible format. Before you create your pivot table, ensure that each of your columns has a heading. Then click on any cell within your data and click the Insert tab. To view a list of pivot tables that Excel recommends, click Recommended Pivot Tables. For example, Excel is suggesting that I could have a pivot table to show the amount of orders for each status, the amount of orders for each department, and so on. If I wanted to use one of these, I can select it, click OK, and the pivot table will be created for me in a new worksheet. To create a pivot table from scratch, click anywhere in the data and in the Insert tab, click Pivot Table. Confirm that the dashed line includes all of your data and then click OK. The Pivot Table Fields panel is displayed on the right side whenever the pivot table is selected. If I click outside of the pivot table area, the field list disappears. This panel is a list of columns I have in my original data. To create my pivot table, I will need to drag or select these fields into the 4 areas below. For example, dragging department into the rows area will list each of the different departments as different rows. I can drag it out again or untick the column to remove it. If I drag department to the columns area instead, each of the departments will be listed as separate columns. The values box is used for calculations. So for example, I could drag order total into this area and it will calculate the total amount of orders for each department. I can click the arrow next to order total and select value field settings. I can then choose a different function if I want, such as average or count, so it would calculate this instead of the sum. If I wanted to break this down further, I could move status into my row box. This adds the status on the left side. The row and column areas are interchangeable. I could swap these around if I wanted to, and my pivot table would still show the same data, just in a different way. If I wanted to see which entries in my original data made up one of these figures, I could double-click in the cell, and Excel will create a table in a new worksheet displaying all of the rows in my original data which make up this figure. If the data on my original orders worksheet was to change, my pivot table would not update automatically. To force an update, click on the Pivot Table Tools Analyze tab and select Refresh. If the data source needs to change, for example if I added more rows to the original data, click Change Data Source and then select all of the data, including the new rows.